Anyway, welcome everybody. Prior to beginning, we'd like to ask you to find a piece of paper that you can make into a square, whether you fold it in half and then rip it off to make it into a square. We need you to make it into a square. You can do that while we're going through the first few slides of just a brief introduction of ourselves. And we'll ask you when we come to the activity to unmute your mics at some point of it. All right, let's get started. So my name is Anne Celestini. I've been a registered nurse since 1993, developed some health problems and ended up not being able to do any more bedside work. So I started teaching with 2013 with Trent University. And I teach in all the courses and all years of the nursing program, both theory and clinical. And I was of the cases we're going to be speaking today, I'm one of the co-instructors of the course. My personal interests, God, my fave, family and friends, my next fave, music, love it, I think it's fantastic, great way to express yourself. Fast cars, yeah, great way. Speed is not a great way to express yourself. I love fast cars. But apparently, yeah, that's illegal. So road trips and learning. Some of the research interests you can see in instructional design, complementary and alternative modalities, stress and management. And some of my publications, just starting into the publication piece of it. So let me see if I have the button on.
And I'm Palalas, really happy to be meeting you here, and once again collaborating with Anne. I met Anne through our doctoral program when Anne was working towards her degree in distance education. It's been nothing but a pleasure working with Anne and finding the overlap in our interests in terms of who you're seeing, who I'm here today. Really interested in what I've been doing for close to 3 decades now, education, practicing it, researching it, with focus on instructional design for the whole person, from the whole person. I do have a lot of experience in face-to-face learning, but the last 20 years, I've been really focusing on practicing, designing, improving learning at a distance, mainly online, either through larger screens as today, or through mobile devices. In terms of personal interest, oh my gosh, it's amazing. But as for many of you here in the room, the line is really blurred between what is my passion and what I call work. So my most, I guess, the actual interest in my life is feeding into the curiosity that is really untamed. And I feed through it by studying, learning every single day, be it through formal or informal activities on my life. The last few years of my studies, learning and research have been really around contemplative pedagogy, mindfulness, and one of the mindfulness activities that I engage in whenever the weather permits is definitely gardening. Over to you, Anne.
This is you.
Actually, it's me. So what we are inviting you here to join us is a discussion of a research that was completed by Anne in collaboration in her at her institution. And the presentation today is going to start with the background, then we are going to move on to the, just highlights of our literature review methodology. And finally, the qualitative data highlights data collected in studies in 2019 and 2020 case studies that was then compared. And we will conclude by sharing the main takeaways. Now, as you see, we follow what we preach. This presentation overview is illustrated using an advanced graphic organizer to highlight the key areas of our topics, subtopics, and therefore visually demonstrating the relationship of these components. Next, please. Problem statement. Well, with growing enrollment numbers in larger cohorts of nursing students, we see greater variety in the backgrounds, preparation level, previous knowledge, abilities, and previous life experiences of amongst nursing cohorts. So the notion of individuals possessing one particular learning styles, we have also now replaced with the concept of learning as evolving multiple learning preferences, which are not static, but contextually dependent and varying over time. Additionally, we've seen learners use quite a variety of diverse routes to attaining similar curricular and extracurricular goals, which further adds the complexity and multitude of possibilities and limitations that our students face. Many learners are still being educated in traditional, standardized, unified ways, methods, and these must be really supplemented by academic accommodations for students who really, truly require diverse learning supports. Meanwhile, our students are really not willing to ask for those accommodations, and we are not able to have a true understanding of what the needs are, the needs of the diverse students who we meet in the classroom every day. That observation led to one of many studies on how we can support diverse students, and that study that we are reporting on today had a research question about, and the next slide, please. Research question. Yes. How does the delivery format influence the learners' experiences of inclusivity in a large first-year nursing course designed using a UDL framework? So the purpose of this particular comparative case study was to answer this question and look into the complexity of what it is that our students require and how we can support those that need academic accommodations or other learning supports, yet are so often hesitant to actually ask for the type of assistance that is required. The disconnect between learner diversity and using the traditional approaches that I mentioned is really what fueled this research question. And over to you, Anne.
I got ahead of myself. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay. So this is an example of what it's a UDL-based approach by providing examples of final product to students. So this is one of the students. With permission, I was able to get this video, and we We're making a flapping bird, so I'm showing you. She made like it with the background and everything, which was a lot of fun. Shows you, we used it as an activity of using multiple ways of representation. And anyway, we won't be doing the whole bird today because it's just not enough time, but we're going to start the first piece of it. Oops, maybe not. So hopefully are you able to see me at all? Anywhere? Can anybody see me?
Yes, yes,
Oh.
we can see you on the camera.
So this is the final thing that we want at the end of this. It's like a square that's been folded and it opens like almost like in between. And so if you have your paper ready, we're going to start this instruction. Now, how many people, is there anybody that doesn't know how to fold paper and or follow instructions? If you prefer not to discuss that, that's fine, but I'm thinking most of us are pretty good with folding paper and yeah. So let's start. Oops, sorry. Sorry. Okay, excellent. So is there a way that I can see the audience again for a minute?
So you're asking
To stop
you
sharing.
stop sharing, yeah.
Okay, so how did everybody do? Does anybody want to show what they did? Would anybody like to show their square? Oh, that's good. It's a diamond share. Yeah, that's not bad. Did you get the little floppy things in the middle? Oh, you did too, eh? Good for you. Good for you. Anybody else? Yeah, you were. It was close. Did you get? Yeah, not so close, but you tried. And you know what? It's not an easy video, is it, to follow? What would have made it better? You can take your mics off for this. Just discussion.
I think some instructions, some either vocal or text ahead of time, or
yeah. Good. What other things would have made it more helpful?
some labels.
Labels, exactly.
In my case, going slower. I have a
pace.
slight ocular motor disconnection and I just got lost. I couldn't keep up.
Yeah, and that interesting, pace is a huge one. We often, as educators, because we're so familiar with the content, I know with nursing, we've got such big words. I'm so used to the content and the words that I use them in class sometimes, not thinking that other people might not understand me. Purpose of the activity, and I can give you the link after if you want to complete it into the full flapping bird. We just don't have time to do the full flapping bird. I've used it for a variety of different teaching approaches. We used to use it to learn different learning styles. But I really think it's not really whether you prefer to learn by visual or, you know, it's a combination of everything, and really the environment impacts, right? There's not just the learner, there's the environment that the learner is in that impacts it. Like, the person gets sleep. Like, I can do this without even the instructions. So does that make me the biggest superhero here? No, I've just done it like 5,000 times with students. So I'm used to it. I have experience doing it and I'm knowledgeable. So that's what makes it easy for me, because I could say, well, what's wrong with you? But as you said, the more, there's two other pieces to this actual flapping bird. The next part actually has a video clip of, excuse me, them putting the bird together. They give you the text, they give you the audio, they give you the text written down. They tell you to make the folds, you know, very crisp. It's often better to use a different, like not a flimsy paper. That's really hard to fold and keep the crease in. But different things, they added all the voice, the video, everything in. And I've used that in class, and it's so much easier for people to follow. And then the last one is a written instruction, and that's one of the worst with just pictures. So I just thought I'd share that, because as educators, I think it's very important, excuse me, to establish, you know, how people learn. And I think the capacities, I'll start the show again. I'll start sharing. But the capacities that reside in students really are dependent over time and context dependent, environment dependent. Yeah, I know. I've noticed that. Okay, let's go on. So, oh, there we go. So UDL is rooted in universal design principles. These principles were initially conceptualized for the built environment, like curb cuts, levered door handles, those types of things. And those practices or principles were brought into education. And that's where UDL comes in. UDL actually is a term, there's 5, I think, models. Now there might be more since the last time I checked, but 5 different models of universal design for learning. I specifically chose this one just because I liked the way it was represented. I felt it was the most straightforward and simple to follow. So it involves like 3 columns. UDL provides the development of a flexible, inclusive by providing multiple means of engagement with the content, each other to learn, multiple means of representation. So not just a video, maybe an audio clip, some text, pictures, application, and multiple means of action and expression, in how the student, what activities you have, and how the student is able to express their understanding of the knowledge. So the goal in UDL is to get to, you can see at the bottom here where it says expert learners, who are purposeful, motivated, resourceful, knowledgeable, strategic, and goal-directed. And this particular chart from CAST, it actually, you can see that these 3 particular principles are further categorized horizontally into build, access, build, and internalize roles to get to that specific expert learner. So it builds and gives a template for educators to start from. The basic elements of a course curriculum for UDL is goals, assessments, materials, and methods. So UDL has become super popular in K-12, and it's been around for a long time in K-12, but very new to post-secondary study. There are a few empirical studies. Most were about principles, interventions, and need to implement. The majority of undergraduate and graduate articles that I found were related to pre-service educators or practicing educators. There is more coming out about UDL and students with documented disabilities, but I firmly believe that there's a lot of learners that do not have documented disabilities, that they don't qualify for the disabilities. There's even less information about nursing education.
So considering that we are at 20 minutes, right? Very quickly, the methodology that is being used for this study, it's a comparative qualitative case study that with a purpose to examine and describe similarities and differences between cases and methods of delivery of the content and instruction, in order to generate holistic view, interpretation of the implications of the differences between the two approaches. And our two case studies were, the case study, sorry, was first year undergraduate nursing students at an Ontarian university. There were two courses that were offered over a period of 12 weeks by two co-instructors, the course being required, and the unit of analysis in this case, a comparative case study, was the course in 2019 versus the one in 2020. The data was collected, qualitative data that was used for this portion of the study was collected in person through in-person 1 hour focus group and through in 2019, and then through similar focus group in that was conducted online in 2020. Over to you. Yes, the limitations were, the fact that it was that the study was conducted during the pandemic, so all the limitations related to that were present. The sample size was not all that great, with 12 students in the first part of the study and 7 students in the second part. It was just one course, one class of students. And over to the next slide, please.
So just very quickly, an evolution of the course redesign 2018 typically has about 240 students. We teach in person by 2 co-instructors, weekly 2-hour lectures and 1-hour seminars. The course redesign in 2019 was in person. It was the first study we did following some funding and used UDL principles. Most significantly, we changed a 2-hour lecture to 2-hour lectures and 2-hour seminars, week 6 to 12, and had a group project versus a final exam. The midterm was changed from multiple choice to an application-based questionnaire that students answered right directly through the LMS, or the learning management system. In 2020, because the pandemic was another opportunity to study the course, because we had prepared for the fall to go online, we were given support in helping to redesign the course into from lecture PowerPoints to modules of each unit. And it was done very well. Collected the data, but it was a little bit too early for me to do my dissertation, so I waited. And in 2021, used that data, analyze it for my dissertation. 2022, just finishing up, going to be presenting the 2023 unfolding case study. 2022 unfolding case study, didn't get a lot of input. I'm going to be doing another grouping next fall 2023. Some of the significant course changes. Flex time or extended deadlines was really appreciated. Participation, so increase in amount of participation. There was in-class activities that were themed, there were bonus points. There was adaptive quizzing that were, participation based. The midterm exam was held on Blackboard online in class. And seminar activities and group work were left for weeks 6 to 11 to 12, so that we could use those last 6 weeks to work on the group project together in collaboration with the instructor over a 6-week period. Some of the methods we used, welcoming classroom. So it's hard to do that in a big class. I did what's called shuffle seating. I'd sit beside, the instructor who wasn't presenting would sit beside somebody in the audience with the students, so that they weren't just sitting there doing something different and part of the class. As part of the materials, slides were posted, lecture recorded, monthly calendars, as much as possible. Then pandemic hit. And it was a perfect time to study this large course, which we had never been offered online, for the first time remotely, fully remotely. And so through goals, a lot of the syllabus objectives were very clear. The weekly units that were made, they were in consistent order. They had little fun activities. It had text, it had videos, it had everything to help learning links. The midterm that we did on the LMS, it was a bit of a disaster in person because we didn't have the room for 240 students to be online at the same time. So there was connectivity issues, there was timing issues. So the next year in 2020, when we used this form, I call it formative review, but it was just a nice way of saying midterm exam. It went very, very smoothly online, very, very smoothly. It was already set up within the course. So very, very well, that was very appreciated, I think. Used both asynchronous and synchronous, increased methods of communication, textbook options, Leganto link, which is a library links. Previous guest lectures we posted so that there was some interactions. And I did do some reweighting of the group project for that particular year. So after the data was gathered, these are some highlights from the 2019. The recorded lectures were helpful to review. Everybody seemed to have an opportunity to reach their full potential. The group project was preferred over an exam. Areas for improvement, more direction on the flex time. It was first new time had been done at the university, so in that department, so it was unfamiliar, and students didn't actually believe that it was a real thing. So the fifth is the tech. The second area of improvement was the tech space and connectivity for the formative review or midterm. Very, very limited with the large class sizes. Qualitative data for 2022. Some of the highlights, the extra time or the flex time was helpful. Different ways to learn, facilitated learning. Trying to initially find material was a problem. And and this was related to the Dropbox location. The group work, yeah, really is just a bit of luck of the draw. And the final one, the instructor made the course more accessible. So to compare both cases, positive feedback, learn versus memorize. Loved extended timelines, preferred more practical application of knowledge versus multiple choice. Areas for improvement were really the navigational issues with the drop boxes, guidelines, and weighting of the group project. In 2020, some of the highlights were about instructor accessibility, weekly synchronous modules, and how they were designed. They were very highly regarded. Group projects were very, very supported and appreciated by students, interestingly enough. The EAQ modules, which are testing modules that align with the textbook readings that they could do in their own time, was also very appreciated. Some of the areas, again, navigational issues tend to be a problem with UDL and having too many resources and overwhelming. Guidelines for Zoom, there were guidelines for Zoom, so I'm not sure sometimes when you get comments where they come from, but there was maybe too many guidelines for Zoom. We had somebody come to class, and we had some, yeah, again, the weighting of the group project seemed to be a big issue for people, so.
And now that we are at 30 minutes, let me very quickly steal 1 more minute from the next presenter and tell you that looking at the data very carefully, would like to highlight just a couple overall guidelines that we have learned and we would apply going forward. First of all, regardless of if it's in person or online or blended, good design is what matters, right? What is good design? Good design is practicing designing on purpose with intention, not overwhelming students with content or instruction, but actually deciding very carefully the why and the what with purpose, right? Purpose that is negotiated with the students when possible. Also, considering access. Access is what has really been highlighted in so many different ways, right? So be it again in person or online, is how do you make things accessible universally? Provide clear guidelines. Always provide your rubrics or criteria ahead of time in that conversation, clarifying to your learners what it is that you expect of them and how it is that you are measuring their learning, the learning that is a process leading to a product. And make sure that you balance out all the various elements, even elements of UDL, right? Again, selecting them by understanding who is in the room and applying them with intention on purpose.